Panama City tonight as heavy rain from Tropical Storm Isidore's outer bands continue to soak the Gulf Coast states. Joining me now with more on Isidore is our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Steve, how bad are these winds going to be associated with Isidore as it approaches the coast?
Well, it looks like we're going to have some sustained winds around 60 miles per hour, maybe a few higher gusts, Sharon, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough to be any significant damage associated with the wind. But the wind has kicked up a tremendous amount of high wave action across the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see here, this is the 11 p.m. advisory, 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Wind 65 miles per hour, so it's still a strong tropical storm. It's moving to the north at 13 miles per hour. And on that current course, it would make landfall sometime around dawn or early tomorrow morning sometime.
Now, you mentioned the high wave action. Can you tell us exactly how high we're expecting in some spots?
Well, right now it looks like the waves offshore are on the order of 20 to 22 feet, something like that, and some of those waves are going to be crashing on the coast later tonight. Some of them are already crashing on some of the coastlines and producing significant beach erosion. So we're going to monitor that relatively carefully. Now, we also have some tropical storm warnings up. They're the same ones that were up earlier, basically from Highland, Texas to St. Mark's. Keep in mind, though, on the west side of the circulation, the wind is offshore, and we really don't have much of a threat with those tropical storm winds on the west side of the circulation tonight. Circulation remains rather ill-formed. It's very wet and very large, though, and because of that, we have a lot of rain coming in, the circulation center being roughly right in this area. And all of the strong winds and the heavier rain and the high surface primarily at and east of the circulation center over here. So that's our primary focus over the next 12 to 24 hours. You can see the circulation here on the radar just south of the southern tip of Louisiana, moving to the north or north-northeast, and there is a tornado watch box out there, so along with the heavy rain, we're going to also have the potential for severe weather, and our Dr. Forbes, our severe weather expert, has been monitoring that rather carefully. Also, some overrunning rain up here encompassing most of the state of Alabama and moving on to the north. Once the system moves inland, we expect it to weaken very, very quickly and just bring rain inland and a few gusty winds, nothing more. Tropical Storm Lily, this is the old advisory. We don't have the new one yet. I can tell you one thing for sure. It doesn't appear to me to have weakened, to strengthen at all. If anything, it has weakened to more of an open tropical wave. There may still be a center out there, but we have not got a vortex message from the aircraft that's been flying out there diligently for hours trying to find a vortex with it. In the meantime, it's going to continue to drift toward the west, move toward the west. At least earlier we had tropical storm watches up for Jamaica and the southern areas of Hispaniola. We still have a hurricane out in the central Atlantic. It's forecast to move virtually nowhere and remain a marine interest, and that system will just sit and spin. In the eastern Pacific, we have a storm out there, but it's going to be primarily rain.
Many residents of New Orleans are spending the night at local shelters because Tropical Storm Isidore is inching closer. We'll have the latest coming up.
And I'm Jeff Morrow in New Orleans. It is just raining tremendously here. We've got to be working on between 8 and 9 inches of rain at the very least, and flooding has been the result. We'll talk more about that coming up in a live report.
I'm Mike Seidel in Gulf Shore. Street flooding and coastal flooding and a lot of beach erosion. We'll check it out for you in just a moment.
Hello and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Warren Madden.
And I'm Dave Schwartz. Thanks for joining us. Well, as we continue coverage of Tropical Storm Isidore, we're keeping a close eye on the latest developments along the Louisiana and Alabama coasts. Many residents along the Gulf Coast were met with mandatory and voluntary evacuations today. There are curfews in place for New Orleans. Gulfport, Biloxi, Mississippi is also under a curfew tonight. Casinos in Biloxi closed earlier today. They won't reopen until emergency officials give them the all clear. There's little to do for tourists in New Orleans. Some popular Bourbon Street haunts have shut their doors. So did the Audubon Zoo and the city's museums. The governors of both Louisiana and Mississippi have declared states of emergency. We have a team coverage of the situation in both Alabama and Louisiana. Our own Mike Seidel is standing by live in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Jeff Morrow is in New Orleans. First off, let's go to Mike Seidel in Gulf Shores, Alabama, with more on the situation there. Mike, how's the flooding situation at this hour?
Well, Dave, certainly we've had a lot of rainfall tonight, like in New Orleans, a lot of street flooding. We'll show you in a minute. But first, I want to show you the storm surge. Now, normally you take these steps down to the beach. I want to be very, very careful because I don't know where the steps end. And look what kind of stuff just floats in. Look at this big board that has come out of somewhere, maybe from Pensacola. And over here we've got a trash can that has floated up. So all kinds of debris coming in. Fortunately, we do have a barrier here and for most of these hotels, so we don't have any water in the first floor rooms at this point. Let me talk about the street flooding now. We're under a flash flood warning here in Baldwin County. Tremendous amounts of rain. And this is video shot in the past hour or so out on Route 98, the main east-west highway right along the beach. And again, standing water everywhere. And part of 98 virtually underwater because it's raining so hard the drains just can't handle this kind of rainfall volume. Let's come back out and show you another look at the surge and the waves and the distance under some of these buildings. And again, I think most of the buildings are going to be okay, but what we're seeing is this water is just eating away at these beaches, which were just replenished at a cost of multi-million dollars 18 months ago. So once this water recedes sometime tomorrow, we're going to see a whole different layout here. Unfortunately, a lot of this sand is going to be gone. As far as the surge is concerned, again, high tide in about 3 hours, so we expect the water to come up at least somewhat more rain and wind overnight. It's been very wet tonight in New Orleans. Let's go down to the Big Easy. Here's Jeff Morrow.
And Mike, there's nothing easy about it tonight. It is a miserable night here in New Orleans. We're actually under a curfew right now, curfew running from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So don't be out on the streets unless you have good business out there. And it is just tremendous rain that continues to come down, much like you were seeing there in Gulf Shores. It's coming down sideways. We're getting some of our strongest winds now, probably gusting upwards of 40 and 45 miles an hour here. And we expect it to get a little bit worse as we head on through the evening. Getting a little bit hard to stand, actually, as we're getting some of this wind. And no matter which way you cut it, folks, it's been a miserable day in New Orleans. Isidore is packing a punch, but it's not wind that's the main worry. It's
the intensity of the rainfall.
You see, New Orleans is in the unique position of being below sea level. While it is protected by a series of levees and flood walls, all the water that enters the city must be pumped out. The pumps can handle about a half an inch an hour, but
if you got rainfall rates like 2 or 3 inches an hour for a couple of hours, there would be a lot of street flooding. Possibly some house flooding.
We have seen quite a bit of street flooding already, making some roads impassable. Some folks are preparing for the worst, and that's good according to the interim director of the New Orleans Office of Emergency Preparedness.
This is a hurricane or a tropical storm very near a hurricane that is quite literally going to center punch New Orleans.
And the mayor has a word of caution as well.
You should look around your homes and make sure that you secure any loose items, you know, patio furniture, what have you, to make sure it doesn't become a projectile.
For the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Jeff Morrow. And one of the officials there in that package said that Isidore was going to center punch New Orleans. I can say we're getting that punch about right now, Dave.
Jeff, the mayor just made reference to high winds that could carry lawn furniture up into the air, projectiles, and doing damage. What about the wind toppling trees and power lines? Any power outages in New Orleans tonight?
Yeah, we have had some reports of sporadic power outages across the city. Nothing major as of yet, but the night's young. I mean, we still have a lot to go through here. We'll keep you updated.
Jeff Morrow, thanks for that report. Here's the